Police officers of Reddit, what was your they could have gotten away with it if they had kept their mouth shut moment? I had a car pass me once where a passenger hangs the upper half of his body out of the passenger side window with his middle finger in the air while screaming, "Muck the police!" He had my attention for the seatbelt violation. I got behind the car and ran the registration. Registration is suspended. Registered owner's driver's license is attached to the registration and his license is suspended. Registered owner also has 2 warrants for retail theft. I stopped the car and they both started with the free speech thing and how I can't stop them for giving me the fingers, which is 100% correct. When I pointed out that I can, however, stop them for the passenger not wearing a seatbelt and for the registration violation, suddenly they both got quiet. Driver got arrested for suspended license and his warrants, and the passenger got himself a citation. The driver's vehicle got impounded. Moral of the story? Tell your passengers to shut their mouths. Had that guy not been a moron, his buddy would have been homeward bound. Not a cop, but a public defender had a client who made a long statement that didn't help her case, but the judge was letting her go without setting bail. Before leaving the courtroom, however, I was informed that the police from another precinct were coming to pick her up, and she'd be held until they did. They didn't get her until much later, but I told her to absolutely not say anything to them, to keep her mouth shut. The next day I go to do her arraignment, and I get the notice of any statements, which started with, "My lawyer told me not to say anything, but this is what happened," and admitted to a variety of crimes. It was frustrating to say the least. Not a police officer, but I do know of this house in my local village that was a notorious den of illegal substances. The police came to search that place but couldn't find anything, and as they were leaving, the lovely owner yelled at them that they should have brought the dogs. So yeah, they came back a few days later with the illegal substance sniffing dogs and found huge amounts of that hidden away. Absolute morons. When I was growing up, a cop approached my mom, who's an attorney, at our house. She closed the door behind her, and I watched the interaction inside with my doggo. Now, my mom was always very honest with me about criminal stuff. She probably wanted to scare me out of committing crimes, something that largely worked. She comes back inside a good 30 minutes later and tells me about the stupidest dealers ever. Guy and girlfriend sell mad amount of illegal substances just down the block from my house. They are the big boy distributors of the area. It's a decent-sized city, but on the smaller side, so I don't know how the heck the illegal substance scene works. And the cops have been hoping to bring these guys down. Well, the cops caught a break when they confessed to a dispatcher. Turns out they were robbed by a rival dealer, and their computer was stolen. This is the early 2000s, so desktops were pretty clunky, along with all of their illegal substance. They called 911 and proceeded to tell them all of these details, somehow never realizing their stupidity. The cops swooped in, the station is literally 2 minutes away, and arrested the lot of them, and then told my mom everything. They were in our neighborhood, and my mom knows and is loved by everyone. Moral of the story? When reporting your house is being robbed, maybe leave out the part where all of your illegal substances was stolen. You know, I'm really curious how that conversation actually went down over the phone. 911, what's your emergency?
Oh, thank God. Everything's been robbed. I'm reporting a robbery.
Okay.
My new Dell computer and all my illegal substances are gone.
Oh, please go on.
The white stuff, the powder, the sugar cherries, all the wings. It's the good stuff.
Yep. We'll come pick you up in a couple minutes.
Honey, I did it. I told them everything. Oh God, I told them everything.
I was asked to help keep the peace while 2 probation officers searched a guy's house. In most jurisdictions, you have to submit to a search of your person and your home if you're on probation. During the search, a PO lifted the probationer's mattress and said monotonously, "Wow." The probationer got upset and said, "Yeah, it's freaking snow in my piece. Arrest me. I don't give a freak." Turns out the PO found a huge naughty toy, but after the guy opened his mouth, the PO lifted the mattress more and found a bunch of individually wrapped grams of snow and a weapon. The PO said that Seeing the naughty toy was enough for him to ignore the mattress, but because the guy said something, he kept looking. That guy's attitude and his need to open his mouth got him 10 years in prison. Not me, but my boyfriend. Boyfriend's working overnight when a guy comes through town doing 35 miles per hour in a 25-mile area. Boyfriend pulls the guy over and asks for his documentation, license, registration, insurance. Guy flips open his glove box, snatches his documents out, and snaps the glove box closed super fast. Boyfriend laughs and says, "What do you have in there?" Guy gets a little sheepish and says,
Registration, insurance, a little bit of leaf.
Boyfriend, "What?" Guy coughs and says,
Registration, insurance, and a little bit of leaf.
Boyfriend laughs again and says, seriously? Can I see? Guy got a slap on the wrist for being honest and having a very small amount. Currently watching live PD, and the guy told the officer, "I have caffeine pills in my back pocket." Gets them out, puts them on the hood. Everyone's chill. The dude then comes clean and says it's Molly, and the officers look at each other and go, "Do we even have a test kit for that?" Other officer says, "No." Dude's face just shows he should have kept his mouth shut. I saw PD as well, ironically in my hometown, where a woman pulled off the highway unnecessarily with another car that the cop initially intended to pull over. She mentioned to the cop that she wanted to have a few words with the other vehicle because they were being rumpholes and trying to race her. This is why the cop pulled the other car over, because they were speeding. Anyways, officer tells her no and that she needs to leave, and that it would not only be unsafe, but also illegal if she got out of her vehicle like that on the side of the highway. She says, okay, whatever. Cop proceeds to speak with the other vehicle, and she is still parked there, now yelling out her window at the other vehicle. Both the cop and the people are laughing, and he still does nothing. Cop goes to write the speeding ticket, and this witch gets out of her car and approaches the other vehicle. He finally freaking cuffed her and put her in the squad car, all the while she's complaining that it's completely unfair, was completely dumbfounded. Okay, so we had a DUI accident where a guy kept driving straight into the woods into a tree because his GPS was predicting a future street. He walked back to his hotel room and left his check and papers in the car. So we go to the hotel and go to his room and knock on the door. He did not have to answer, but he did. He was pretty clearly intoxicated. I asked him if he had anything to drink since the accident. He did not have to answer, or he could have told us that he drank after the accident. He said,
No, I haven't had anything to drink since the accident.
And where I'm from, you have 24 hours to report a property damage only accident, so it wasn't even a hit and run. So, as I'm locking the guy up, he tells me he's a lawyer. I told him, I hope you're not a defense attorney. But in his defense, he was intoxicated. I can respect that. A man who follows his GPS, his Siri, all the way to the end. Turn left.
But, Siri, that's just the ocean. Are you sure that's the way to Disney World?
Yes, turn left. Do it now.
Okay, here we go.
Yes, another one. When I was in high school, I liked to park in parking spots that cars had parked poorly into just as a muck you. One time, I was at a high school football game and a Jeep had parked like crap. He was nearly halfway into the spot next to him and parked at an angle. I was driving a 98 Chevy Silverado at the time, a big old pickup truck, and I had my brother help guide me into the spot so I was perfectly in the lines. That made it so the driver door was completely impossible to get in. I took a picture for the novelty of it and went on my way. When I got back to my car, the Jeep was gone and every panel on the passenger side of my car was keyed. There was an officer nearby, so I told him about it and showed him the picture. He told me there's not a lot they could do because there were no witnesses, but he'd give it a shot. He looked up their license plate, called them, and asked them if they had done it. They confessed and ended up having to pay $1,600 in restitution along with getting a felony. My friend was pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt while he was with a few buddies, gets handed his ticket, and the guy in the back seat says, "Am I going to get a ticket too?" Officer replies,
Well, were you wearing your seatbelt? No. All right. Can I see your ID?
Not really the brightest fella. I don't know why, but I love how, he was excited by this.
Hey! Oh, come on, man. Can I have a ticket?
Yeah, me too. Come on, I want one. Let's all get one.
Oh, shucks. All right, kids. Everyone gets a ticket today. Hooray! I pull over this guy for expired tabs, ask for his ID, and he's feeling around for his wallet. Can't find it. He says,
Man, I'm one of you. It's cool.
Oh? What department?
Oh, actually, I'm a security guard, but same thing.
I'm polite. So, where's your ID?
Oh, it's in the...
And he motions to the trunk.
It's in the trunk? Actually, no.
My BS radar is going off.
Okay. You want to get your ID out of the trunk? Nah, I don't have it.
He starts looking around for another story to use, but now I know I'm supposed to stay out of the trunk. He's also not giving me any more information.
No ID, then I have to take you in and get you fingerprinted.
I'm going to get in that trunk one way or another. He's looking like he's lost. I ask him what's in the trunk, but he's not talking anymore. We pull him out and get him in cuffs. Another officer takes him to get ID through fingerprints. Since his car is expired past 6 months, California laws, we tow the car. In the process of getting ready to tow the car, we need to take a quick inventory. In the trunk was a police uniform with fake patches and a metal badge. No weapon, but a duty belt. He also has stacks of explicit imagery of children. This is a guy who a neighboring city had been looking for months. His MO was to dress as a police officer, talk to kids, and you can figure out the rest. If he just gave me his name, I could have looked up his ID and verified he had one. I'd probably have let him go, but the neighboring city had zero information as to his name. They only had a vague description of the car and the fact he was posing as a police officer. In fact, what he would do is start talking to a kid in the 9 to 12-year-old range, tell him he has to be taken in for questioning, and handcuff the kid and take him to his car. He was a bad dude. So this happened a few years ago. I was patrolling my buddy at night. It was almost the end of our shift. Suddenly, we get an alert that a local nearby gas station had just been robbed, unsuccessfully, and that the suspect was supposed to pass by us in a red car. Indeed, seconds later, we saw a man speeding through the road. Details on the side, we ended up catching him on a dead-end street. When my buddy was handcuffing the suspect, I asked the suspect if he had something to do with the robbery. He repeatedly said,
I've never been there. Ask the ginger lady.
Turns out the cashier that night was an old lady named Marcy, covering up for her ill daughter, whom would have never been able to identify him since he was wearing a black mask during the robbery, which we never found. Marcy had ginger hair. Fortunately, the suspect was kind enough to inadvertently confess the crime. How could he know the appearance of the cashier if he had never been at the crime scene? The jury thought the same. Fellow officers stopped a car for a turn violation. Guys want to be illegal substance dealer, who we've seen around the bars before. We were talking with him and asked permission to search his car. He agrees. I'm bullcrapping with them about sports and weather, and the officer finds a duffel bag. So I joke and say, nothing in there that's dangerous, right? Like bombs or grenades or explosives. He nods and says, yeah, a bunch of dynamite. I'm waiting for him to laugh or smile or shrug or do something that screams it's a joke. Nothing. I say, I'm going to open the bag and look, okay? Expecting at any moment he will stop me. He doesn't. It was 8 sticks of dynamite he stole from a construction site. Separate story. If he didn't say anything, I would have ignored the bag thinking it was tools. He was getting supplies from an MC to terminate someone. Needless to say, he went to prison for a few years. Pulled a guy over because his car was looking pretty run down. Wanted to lecture him that he shouldn't be driving around at night with only half his lights working. We got out of our car, and I approached the driver window, and he looks at me and says,
yeah, all right, I admit it. I smoked some leaf.
Alrighty then. Wanted to give him another chance. What? We know your lights are broken.
No, I smoked the leaf.
Cue the eye roll. Gosh darn it, man. So we parked his car and drove him to have a blood test done. We were already done with our shift for an hour because we waited for a long time for the doc. So when we got out, I was ready to go home. He turns to me and says, I can't call anyone to pick me up. We're all getting in trouble. Good Samaritan kicks in, ends up driving the guy home. He's a chill dude, obviously. I don't know what happened to him afterwards. He probably lost that internship we were talking about. Some idiots from my hometown broke into a few houses in the early 2000s. Among several stolen items was a handheld video camera. They proceeded to record themselves breaking into several more houses and posing back home with their haul. Several of the items, including said camera, ended up at pawn shops. Well, when the battery died, they didn't remove the tape. As is customary, the pawn shop found a compatible charger and watched the recordings. Copies of their fingerprints, IDs, and the video were turned into the police, and these morons went to jail. Almost everything from the videos was recovered from area pawn shops. Not a cop, but I have a buddy that is. Nothing too crazy, but he's had countless moments where he's tried to give people a break, or all they had to do was sit down and be quiet, but they end up talking themselves into jail. Recently had a dude he pulled over that was a bit over the limit for a DUI, but not too much, so he was going to let a friend pick him up instead of arresting him. Guy got to talking and basically revealed driving under the influence was something he did fairly regularly. A single mistake is one thing, but my buddy decided the best chance at getting him to stop would be learning the lesson the hard way. Not a cop. I had a roommate in college that was no friend of mine. He got in a fight at a bar and was kicked out. He tried to go back into the bar and got thrown out again, but a cop happened to be driving by the second time. The cop told him to relax or he was going to be arrested, and he told the cop to arrest him. The cop handcuffs him and puts him in the back of the cop car. Roommate then started banging on the window. Cop then recuffed him with his hands behind his back. Roommate's stupidity carried on for the next couple of months. He was supposed to go to court over the whole thing but didn't show up. Police showed up at his job, cuffed him, and brought him to court. Judge told him he would have just received a slap on the wrist, but he now had to send him to jail for a couple of days. He was scheduled to report to jail a week or two later, and he didn't show up for that either. By this time, he disappeared. I never saw the guy again. Not a cop, but a witness. During college, my friends and I would hang out outside and smoke hookah. Frequently, we would invite strangers who passed by to join, or campus police would casually chat with us as they made their rounds. So, one time, a group of freshmen walked past and asked to join. After about 15 minutes, the campus police car rolls up and the freshmen get visibly nervous. We tell them to calm down. The cops are chill. As soon as the cop gets out of the car, one freshman bolts and he makes it about 20 feet before the cop tackles him. We all clap and heckle the kid. Upon searching him, the cop finds a bunch of leaf. Then he says, "You realize prior to running I had no reason to be suspicious? I just wanted to talk to my friends over there," and points at us. The cop ends up writing a ticket and sends him off. In college, after an early football game, we had a large group at my house. We were planning on partying, but there was a really good game on, so everyone was just sitting around watching the game. We were about 50-50, underage, ages 20 to 22. There were a few people who had beers, but the drinking had not started. People were flowing in steadily, and I guess the neighbors saw the amount of cars and called the cops to file a noise complaint at 7 p.m. There was a knock at the door, and someone said, "Come in." In walks a cop. I surveyed the room to realize everyone who had a beer was over 21, except one. Just as the officer was about to speak, she takes off and dives from the couch to behind the kitchen counter. The cop pauses, shakes his head, said there was a noise complaint, but he had been sitting outside for 10 minutes and hasn't heard a word. Said to enjoy the game, looks at the kitchen, shakes his head again, and walks out. Luckily, I lived in the town next door to the college, or it would have been a rough night. This situation came from a friend of mine. So we lived with 3 other guys in a 4-bedroom apartment. One day, when only one roommate was home, the police came knocking. They asked if they could come in and search for suspected illegal substance usage. Here's where I should mention the roommate who was home was kind of an oblivious shut-in who spent most of his day playing World of Warcraft or Magic the Gathering in his room. So of course he says, "Sure, come on in," having no idea what his roommates have been up to. In room 1, they find nothing, as that was the oblivious guy's room. Room 2, they find a personal bag of leaf. Room 3, they find a pipe. Roommate 3 didn't smoke, but he and roommate 2 played video games a lot, so it belonged to roommate 2. In room 4, they find a possession with intent to distribute. Giant bag of leaf. Apparently just a crap load. Roommate 2 told me it was the most leaves he'd ever seen in one place. And he was angry because he always bought from someone else. Didn't know his roommate was a dealer. 3 of the 4 get arrested. Only one who didn't was the guy who let them in. My friend was roommate 3. Charges against him got dropped because roommate 2 fessed up to the pipe being his and got a slap on the wrist. Not sure what happened to roommate 4. They never saw him again. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description as well. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.